Hello and welcome to the United Devil channel with me, JB. I hope we're all doing extremely well this Monday, the 13th of April. I can't believe this month is already gone super quick. And look, it's match day today. United against Leeds, 8 o'clock tonight. There will be a watch along for that as well. So getting your views and opinions on that as well. So look, we're going to go through some transfer stories today. It's really good for me on the basis that these are brand new stories, so I think it's worth getting into it. So Aleksandar Pavlovic, you've got Jeremy Monga today. We're going to talk about that as well. Barrios as well, so Pablo of Atletico Madrid. So we're going to get into all that stuff as well. It is nice to have some different things and different people to talk about today. So we're going to get into all those new stories today. And quite an interesting one as well. I think really some different stories. Scott is in the house, mate. I hope you're doing extremely well, buddy. Yeah, mate, I do hope that you're doing well. Who's in the house? JB's in the house. I am in the... Well, I'm literally in my house. So it is fantastic. Look, I'm going to start off this week strong. Back to normal. Hopefully going to do a watch along tonight. So you're going to be sick of me tonight. So look, get into the chat about the weekend. I want to know about tonight. What you think about what's going to happen tonight. What you think the score is going to be tonight. I genuinely don't know. I honestly don't know how it's going to be tonight. I can't call it tonight. Leeds are going to be on the front foot. Martinez potentially looking at maybe starting. He is back. Would you risk him? I don't know if I would. I've got to be honest. I'm not sure if he's somebody that I would risk tonight on the basis that we've got some important games as well. So it's going to be a fascinating last couple of games, which I think tonight we've got to win tonight. I think first and foremost, beyond anything else that we do tonight, is we've got to win. I don't care. I think somebody said it on the watch along yesterday. I don't care how we do it, by hook or by crook. We have to win this game. So it's going to be a massive 3 points tonight. So let's see if we can get that in the house. So we're going to go through it. And look, as you can see on screen as well, I'm going to put a couple of little pictures up as well of the players that again linked to today. And some of them, I do think that they are quite exciting players. And I wonder if these are players that we can actually get. But I think it's worth going through these type of players. So, Aleksandar Pavlovic, breakout star, promising to break through Bayern Munich last season, 21 years old, going to be 22. So that kind of player who's kind of going to transition from that kind of youth player to a senior player. And that's what he is this season. He is a senior player. I think he's played something like 20 games already, establishing himself as a CDM, a defensive midfielder type. This kid, this young man is already turning into one of the best defensive number 6. Some of his stats and the metrics that we will look at as well are becoming elite in the Bundesliga. Are Bayern, have they just unearthed, or have they got another player that they can use and a player that they've got for the next 10 years? He already seemed, I have actually seen him play quite a few times this season. Very composed, very composed player. I like him. He's 6'2" or 3, so he's very much of the Busquets sort of style, the Rodri type of player, and he's already dictating games. United, I think, are in there at the moment. I think Liverpool. Look, he's got a contract, as I say, until 2029. Bayern Munich, he's playing just fantastic player. If you look at the stats this season, so he's played 20, he's played 1,275 minutes, he scored 3 goals, 1 assist, 4 goal contributions. His average rating now, this is in the Bundesliga, so you almost have to take that with a pinch of salt in some respects. Per games metrics, passes per game, 98 percentile. His accuracy of passing is 94.7, key passes per game 1.2, goal involvements 0.28 per 90. But he's not that sort of player. He is a dictator. No, he is a conductor. He is that, for me, I think he really is that Busquets type of, that classic German, more so modern German defensive midfield player. Top 8 in the defensive midfielders in the Bundesliga, top 5 for passing and controlling ball involvements. He is elite already. He is a deep lying midfield tempo player. Perfect for Bayern. I think he'd be perfect for us as well. Do you think Bayern would let him go? I think this is something where we've probably missed a trick on this. So Kelayu says, I'm a Madrid fan. Hello, welcome to the show. Madrid fans are welcome as well. Of course you are. Look, I think he'd be perfect. Do I think the Bayern would let him go? I think this is a player that I think we probably should have got last season. I think this is a player that I think that we've missed. I don't think there'd be any harm in looking at this player. I don't think there'd be any harm in putting in a cheeky bid. I think he goes to the World Cup. I think he's established himself in that Bayern team. 21 years old, 22 in May. Perfect. Perfect cusp. I do think here potentially Bayern have this absolute gem of a player. I think they've got this absolute elite player. The reports are that we've gone in on this player. We like this player. I think we've done this too late. I genuinely can't see Bayern letting him go, or if they do, it's gonna be like 100 million again. It is gonna be 100 plus. Age, contracts, what he's already doing, and yes, I think you could probably argue doing it in the Bundesliga is completely different to doing it in Premier League. I think I honestly, with the metrics and the stats and looking at how he plays, I think he could be another one of those world-leading defensive midfielders. He's German as well, playing for Bayern Munich. I think he could end up being one of the probably the quintessential German midfielders for the next 10 years. I'm pleased that we're going for these types of players. But look, I don't think it's a player that we're going to get unless we want to stump up some big money for him. It's the sort of player, it is the sort of deal that INEOS would definitely like to do. I just think that it's probably come a year or two too late. But look, this guy is absolute fantastic. 30 grand a year. He's on 30k a year. I think for us to get him here would have to be like a Hargreaves type of situation whereby I know Hargreaves is Canadian, isn't he? But kind of having those English links, I just don't think he is. I just don't think he's going to even think about it at present. When you're in the Bayern team, you're playing in the Bayern team. He's probably going to get a huge bump up in wage. They look like they're probably going to win the Champions League. He's just an absolute. I just think he's just an absolute fantastic player. So I think there are going to be reports, stories about this. Again, I think I would probably file this under maybe a player that got away. I think these are the types of young players that I think we do keep that we miss. Mr. Edits is, I don't know, what's he saying in there? Honestly, Scott is already on it. Honestly. I didn't Xerxes 2 years ago. So a little saying in the chat. Hargreaves. He did Hargreaves. Hargreaves played for England, but I'm sure Hargreaves was either had some sort of Canadian links. I think Hargreaves was Canadian born, I think, wasn't he? Hargreaves was English, but I think he was like, I'm sure Hargreaves was born in Canada or born in here and then lived in Canada for like a long time. But what I mean really by that is Hargreaves. But I'm sure Hargreaves was born in Canada. Was born in like something like Toronto or Alberta, and Hargreaves basically qualifies for England or something because his father is Welsh, or his mum is Welsh, or his father's English, or you know. But Owen Hargreaves, I believe, was born in Canada. I actually think he was born in Canada. But I think the comparison that I make on that is more so the fact that for us to get that sort of player, I think that he would have to be a sort of Hargreaves type, as in, you know, he can play for England. He's a German player. He's going to play in the Germany. But look, he is. I think he's going to be. I think he's going to be a star. I do. You know, 21 years old, holding that Bayern Munich midfield together. And yes, you can argue it is the Bundesliga, but Bayern Munich have just scored the most goals they've ever scored in a Bundesliga season. You know, you could argue potentially that is this, you know, the all-round leagues, maybe the standard across all leagues has dropped. But Bayern Munich have just scored the most goals they've ever scored in the Bundesliga. I think it's like 105. Champions League, they're doing fantastically well. And when you've got this kid who is fitting in seemingly in the stars in this team, I think he's just going to be one for the future. In fact, I think he's one for now. So, are we going to be linked to him? Yes, we are. Do I think there's any legs in it? No, I don't. I think this is one that we probably missed. And I think these are the sorts of young players that we should be looking at. Instead of, and we will go on to the sort of next player that I think is probably the antithesis. I think he's probably the opposite to this player in terms of what I think he's probably going to become, and that really is so Barrios. So Pablo plays for Atletico Madrid, so we have been linked to him. So there are reports out there today that there are secret links, secret talks being held with him. This is a follow-on from last season. This is a follow-on from last summer. So Barrios was on the radar last summer as well. Looked like a good player. 22 years old, about 6'1". He's a number 8, number 6, so he's a bit of a hybrid player. So he is that hybrid. I think he leans more so towards that sort of number 8. He's not an all-round number 6. He's not necessarily a quintessential number 8, but he's that kind of, he's that sort of Spanish, which he is Spanish obviously, but he's that typical sort of Spanish hybrid midfielder that can play in the midfield. Look, he's played 25 games this season, 18 in La Liga. He has missed 25% of the season through injury. He was injured, I think, at the start of the season. He's played 1,600 minutes or so, scored 1 to 2 goals, 2 to 3 assists. He is one of those players that I think is either going to come into the Premier League and be one of the next big stars, or I think he's going to be one of those sort of Spanish players that come in, promise a lot, but actually don't necessarily do too much. Now, I've seen him play a couple of times again. I mean, I like him. I do like him, but I wonder if he would struggle. Glory to United. Danny is in the house. Dino is in the house as well. So I am concerned. I am concerned about it. And as Dino says there in the chat already, you know, he's already been out for 25% of the games. He's 22. I think he's going to be 23 this year. So he is, and again, he's going to be very, very expensive. He's one of Atletico's important midfielders. I think he's seen as a long-term starter. I think one of the things that has held him back has been the injuries. He is a midfield connector, so on the plus points, like he is a ball progressor. He's very intelligent, very, very high IQ player, tactically smart. He presses his. The reason why he's, for me, is a hybrid and can do the both roles. So not only is he composed, he progresses with the ball. His IQ is fantastic. Pressing and defensive work, his work rate is really, really high. He's a bit like a Tonali in some respects. I think if I was to liken him to somebody, I would probably liken him to a Tonali type of player. I'd even probably say a Kovacic, Enzo Fernandez type of kind of role. Tonali, you know, when he first came into the league, Tonali was what, 22, 23, so roughly about the same age. You know, Tonali wasn't the player that he is now. He was quite raw. But I think if I was to liken him to somebody 2022, if we're looking at this player now, are we looking at a Tonali type? Are we looking at this as a Tonali early on? We bring him in for a fair amount of money. Prices of centre midfielders, hybrid midfielders. As Dino says there, he is good, and I think Dino's probably summed it up perfectly there. I think for me is he's good, but is he a player that wows me? Now look, I'm probably going to get pelters for this as well, but Tonali for me is a very similar player. Tonali for me is a very similar player in terms of, look, Tonali's got better now and Tonali runs with the ball. But last season, Tonali's one of those players that he's never going to do those. He's never going to do those. He's never going to be. Let me just change the picture over. Transition. Tonali's never going to be the player that necessarily puts in the killer pass for a goal, because he's not that type. He's not a Bruno Fernandes type. He's a very, very hard working player. Now, I think the reason why Tonali rates so highly is because you get certain players from time to time who become the next big thing, right? And Tonali goes about his business. He works extremely hard, and I like him. I like him a lot. I think Pablo is a similar type of player. I think he could progress to Tonali's level, potentially. As Danny says, he would be expensive. And I agree with you, Danny. I think he would be a very, very expensive signing. I think that would be my caveat to this, is he would be a very expensive sign. You know, would we be happy? I think centre midfielders this summer. I think the transfer of Wirtz, I think, has really skewed the market. And I know they're not the same sort of players, but I think what's happened last season, particularly with the Bundesliga, Liverpool, with the amount of money that they spent, I think we've been accused in the 90s, the early noughties, for inflating the market. I think Liverpool inflated the market last summer with the Wirtz deal, the Ekitike deal, the Isak deal. Now people are going to be looking, and because we know there is a United tax, because they know that we need a midfielder, they know that we need two. I agree with the chat. I think that he would be a very, very expensive deal to do. And would we be happy in going to get a midfielder 22, 23 years old and probably paying Anderson money? You know, probably playing, you know, that sort of, probably paying Wharton money? Would you rather an Adam Wharton for 70 million? I think my answer to that would probably be yes. Check out Mamadou Sangare. Yes, Danny, I like Sangare at Lens 30 to 40, or Caleb Yarenki at I can't even pronounce that, mate. Who Sangare, yes, I like Sangare a lot, I do, but Yarenki, I do need to look at him. And I would rather, and this is where we have got to get this right. And I think my question really at the back end of these two midfield positions, because these are two serious midfield positions, are: do we trust the club to get this right? Sangare now, and I like Sangare. I do. I really like Sangare as well. But is this club smart enough to go and get that? The Sangare lad in I've seen them both play. I like I do like the one at Lens. Look, those are the two midfield players linked this morning. I think the Barrios deal. I think of the two. Look, I think the Pavlovic move. I think as much as that would be my preferred move, I'm not going to lie, I think he'd be an absolute fantastic player. It's just, I just don't think that that's a deal. I just don't think that that's a deal that we're going to do. I just don't think that it's a deal that we can do. I think if you're a City, I think that's potentially a deal that you could do. Between the two players, it's Barrios and Pavlovic. I would love that Bayern Munich player. I think he's just got so much potential. I just think he's going to be a fantastic player. Pablo Barrios, he's strong. And this is, we're in no position to talk here. But I think, and Andrew, I will come on to what you said there. I think he just reminds me of one of those players who probably going to end up, playing for somebody like a Newcastle, playing for somebody, who is. Look, I'm just assuming here. Is this an arrogant thing? I'm going on what I think that we need to do, and historically, he reminds me of a typical sort of Aston Villa player. Comes into the Premier League, a fantastic player, injured. So I worry about that. So let's get into the chat a little bit more. Get them to off of the screen now. So let's get into some of your chats. What are we saying? Do you think United will win against Leeds? And I think they'll win 4-0 today. Andrew, very confident, very, very, very confident, my friend. I think it's going to be a very, very end-to-end game. I will come back to that. Dino says Sangare now is a player that I'd go for. Sangare needs another year at Lens. See if he's not just a one-season wonder. He's not a one-season wonder. I wanted Sangare when he played in Austria before Lens signed him. His price is worth the risk. Bayern will never sell. Exactly. I don't think that they will. So look, do I think? Look, let's talk a little bit more game before I talk about. Before we go on to Monga. Monga is, I think, is a very exciting player, and I think an interesting profile of player. But we will get on to him as well. Like 16 years old, 17 years old, winger type. Very, very interesting player for me. But let's go. Let me go through the chat again. So, what do I think the score is going to be tonight? So, Andrew says that he thinks we're going to win 4-0 tonight. I would love that to happen. Look, if United win 4-0 tonight, then that makes a statement. That would be a statement to the Premier League. That would be a statement, and I would applaud that. I don't think that that's going to happen. Scott says 3-1. To be fair to Scott, Scott's pretty good at predicting all this, all the games malarkey. I think it's going to be a very close game. Well, it shouldn't be a close game. I'm gonna verbatim. So the second half of the Carrick presser came out, and there was a couple of interesting points on that came out. One of them was that Carrick, and again, I think it's really important to sort of highlight the things that he says, particularly as he's going to become the full-time coach. Is, he's saying that the boys are happy, the boys, they trained really well, the boys are looking forward to the game, they've had, in terms of days off, I think it's 25 off. There is no excuse tonight. Like, I'm with Andrew, we are vying for third position. We are, and if I'm being honest and I'm looking at the best of the rest outside of an Arsenal, a City, Aston Villa, us, Liverpool, I think those are the three that I think are probably the best of the rest. And I'd argue, Liverpool-wise, I don't think amongst those three, I would probably argue that Villa probably play better as a team. But I think we are the best of the rest, and one of the things this season is that anybody can beat anybody on their day. Like Leeds, as we spoke about, Leeds transition fast. Leeds are going to be on the front foot. It seems to me that the less games we have, the more impactful it is, rather than being more energetic. We've had 25 days off, and I'm not 100% sure that we're going to go out tonight and we're going to blitz it. Look, I can only go by what I've seen so far. And I think tonight's game is going to be, I think we're going to see a United side that are going to play how they've always played. And I'm okay with that. I am honestly okay with that. It's what we've seen all season. I think we've only seen it Arsenal, City. Maybe you could argue another game where we've come at the blocks and we've played consistent the whole game. I'm demanding a win. I'm shifting away from what am I going to predict, right? Because I think in some respects, as much as Scott predicts a 3-1, I get that. All right, I am no longer interested in predictions for me. I'm interested in this team has to win. There is no excuses tonight for this team not to go out and win this game. They've been off for 25 days. They have to go out and they have to win this game. If they win this game, they have got 1 foot in the Champions League. Because Chelsea, from what I saw, are absolutely disgraceful. If I was a Chelsea fan, I would just be livid with that display. We've got pretty much a full contingent. Chad says a draw tonight. Look, I genuinely cannot predict what we're going to see tonight. One thing I don't think we're going to see, and Andrew may not be happy with me on this one, is I don't think we're going to see a dominant United side. I don't think we're going to see. Danny says, "Yeah, mate, I'll see you I'll see you tonight, Danny." I don't think we're going to see a dominant display, and the reason for that is because I don't think Michael Carrick, from a tactical perspective, can do that with this side. Whether or not, for me, the jury is out, and Andrew says there, I think Carrick should be the manager for a long time. And Andrew, look, that is your view. I think that remains to be seen. Look, there is no point in me talking about a coach. Milton is in the house and says hi, because I don't think we're going to get the players that we need for what I want. I don't think we're going to get the coach that I want. So this has to work. Milton says, hi, look, Milton, my friend, you don't have to apologise, buddy. We've got to make it work. Once again, we've got to make it work. We've got zero choice but to make this work as a club. We're not best in class. We're not going to be best in class. So when Michael Carrick takes over, which he will, which I've said on this channel for quite some time, and I've been, this is something that I've been told for the longest time. This is something that I've been saying on this channel, that Michael Carrick is going to get this job. Is going to make do. Now look, now back to what the presser, the interesting thing on the presser for me was the way that Carrick was talking. Sky, thank you Sky. Sky's become a member for 3 months, so thank you Sky, absolute legend. Big man Maguire to score header. Sky's going to be very, very difficult for Maguire to score tonight because Maguire's not playing tonight. So unless somebody literally kicks the ball off of his face whilst he's sat there, Maguire's not playing tonight because he's banned. So he's not. Maguire is not on the pitch tonight. He's banned. Andrew says if he does well for us, I can see United will win the league next year. Andrew, and look, guys, I like the predictions. Andrew, I think title talk and winning the league is probably for a different show. But when we're looking at the transfers and the sort of players that we're looking at, Maguire not playing since Milton, yes, he's out. So tonight, look, there some team news if you didn't hear it. Martinez is back. He's on the grass. Carrick's favourite saying is they're on the grass. He's on the grass, and I don't mean he's smoking. I mean he's literally running on some grass. I think he'll be in the team tonight. Are we going to see him? Are you going to risk him? And there's been questions out there that I've seen today asking, are we going to risk a Lisandro Martinez? And my response to that would be yes. Yes. Get him on the pitch because we need our leaders. Why is that even a topic of conversation? Get him on the pitch. If his body can't handle being thrown back into a game where we need him, then Martinez has to go. So get him back on the pitch because he needs to play. Now the other thing that was interesting for me, and I thought this was quite brave actually. So one of the reporters, and this is the embargoed section of the presser, was they were talking about now that we've gone to third, if we finish sixth, would that be seen as a failure? And Michael Carrick, his response to it was really quite funny. Was that he was a bit taken aback that somebody in the press would basically say is that a failure because you've not finished third, and if you finish outside the Champions League, is that a failure? Carrick's response was an interesting response. He basically said, "Oh mate, that's a bit harsh," and I'm thinking, no, it's not. This is high-end football. You want to be the coach. This side is in third. If we now finish sixth, it will be a failure. There is no excuses, as Sky has said in there. So Chelsea are abjectly awful, and they are what, fifth, sixth? We are better than Chelsea. If we do not get into the Champions League from this position, it is a failure. It is an abject failure. And this is coming from somebody that predicted we'd finish from 8th to 10th. And I'm more than happy. I'm more than happy to be wrong on this instance. But now that I'm in it, now that I'm if Carrick gets the job, I will support this coach. Now, Carrick, this is where, my friend, this is where now if you want to be the coach full time, you've got to get us third. So I just thought, as a question and the response to that question, I just thought it was a for once. I thought, as a presser, I thought that was a very, very good question to ask. I thought Carrick's demeanour in the pressers again. Look, Michael Carrick is a yes man. Before I go on to Monga, I do want to talk about one other thing that he said in the presser as well, which doesn't thrill me and make me happy. Cadbury says, United give Maguire a contract just like Chelsea give James a contract. Bizarre or English? Let's go Chelsea. Look, the contract stuff with Maguire, I think as we mentioned last night, there are rumours that actually Maguire is not going to take a contract cut. It is not a pay cut, or if it is a pay cut, it is a very limited pay cut. It is not going to be this 100 grand. He's on 190 grand. There's talk of it either being the same wage or 150, 160 grand. I am not up for that. I am not happy about that. And once again, I think we've been led down a garden path on that. But Andrew says, I believe that Mason Mount is back. Look, I like Mason Mount. The reason why I don't talk about Mason Mount is because, look, until Mason Mount puts a string of 10 games together, I don't class Mason Mount as a player. I don't. And look, if that offends people, I apologise. But until Mason Mount can play more than 3 games in a row, I don't class Mason Mount as a player. Mason Mount, Andrew, apparently has been back for the last month. Mason Mount has been back in the squad. And again, Michael Carrick is complicit. Michael Carrick is a company man. Mason Mount has been back for the last month and a bit. Yeah. I think United will win the Champions League spots. I got that feeling. Got a chat. Look, I do agree with you. I think that United will get one of the Champions League spots because we've got to. Chelsea, by comparison, Chelsea are not great. Chelsea are not good, so I do think that we will. Now, one of the other things that Carrick in the presser said that, quite frankly, shows me, I'm not gonna rant on it. I'm just going to give you my opinion on it. So, Michael Carrick, at the very start of the presser, there was stadium talk. Talking about the stadium again. Mount just doesn't have the credit in the bank for me to be bothered if he plays or not. Exactly, Dino. I don't count him as a player until he plays more than 10 games. He's not a player for me. I'm sorry. I know maybe that offends people, and maybe it's not fair. But until he plays more games, I'm sorry. It's not for me. So, what did Michael Carrick say? So there was a really strange question asked about the stadium. So just for laughs says, so John, question for you, and I know your glasses are rose tinted, but not as rose as some. Whose squad would you rather have next season, United or Liverpool? One overachieved and one underachieved. Okay. I will, as I do. I am not one for, just telling people what they want to hear. I get told all of the time that I'm not a real fan, etc. So, look, whose squad would I rather have? Now, this is a very interesting question, and I think that's a very, very good question. Liverpool this season have underachieved by a long way. There is no question to be had here, and I think United have overachieved. And the reason why I think that is because if you put United in any other season, last season, this season, before last, the way that we've played this season, and people are going to go on about how United have played extremely well. Fine. We haven't. Right? We are very fortunate this season that this league is utter dog shit. If we were in previous seasons, we would be nowhere. I know what you mean. If we were in any other season, we would be nowhere near a top 3. And I will have that argument with anybody. This season has been the most inconsistent, probably worst Premier League season that we've seen in a long time. And I truly believe if we were in any other season, the way that we've played, we would be getting nowhere near the top 3, 4, 5. That's my view. Fine. Liverpool, I don't know what the problem was. Did they buy too many players too soon? The Jota thing as well, I think, has to come into account. I think when you lose a teammate in the way that they did, I've got to say that I think that has to have an impact. I don't think players use it necessarily as an excuse. I just think that when that happens, I think it's a very, very difficult thing to do. I think that Liverpool, defensively, I think they were very naive in terms of, not getting defensive cover for the centre-backs. I don't think Virgil van Dijk is the player that he was. Alisson being injured as well, I don't think has helped. You've got a new midfield in terms of Wirtz coming for big money. I don't think Slot is particularly good. I don't think Slot won the league. I think Klopp won it. Salah has got older. So I think there are many reasons this season why Liverpool have probably underachieved. Look, they are the champions. I think that they should have achieved more. But do I think they're good enough to win the title this season? Look, if they'd have had Isak firing on form, Jota, the tragedy hadn't have happened, and I think they'd have bought a centre-back. If they'd have got a Guehi, in the summer, I think that would have helped them as well. So I do think they've underachieved. Whose squad would I rather have? Now, look, Liverpool on paper, in my opinion, have the better squad. I think defensively, I think there is an argument. I think when you're looking now and you look at the goalkeepers, look, there is no doubt Liverpool's keeper is still one of the best in the world. He's getting older. I think that Lahrmann's gap is, look, I'm not trying to suggest that Lahrmann's is a better keeper. I think that Alisson is, but I think if you to ask the same question in the next 3 to 4 years, I think Lahrmann's would be a better keeper. But look, I would say that Alisson is the better keeper, but I would stick with Lahrmann's, not necessarily because I think he is the better keeper as of now. I just think in terms of the long term, I would keep him. Defensively, look, I think Kirkes, Frimpong are better than what we've got. Defensively, I think in terms of now, and I'm not talking about Van Dijk of prime Van Dijk. If we're talking now, I think centre-back wise, I think you could argue the quality is in and about the same. There is no doubt your midfield is better than ours. I think Szoboszlai is an absolute just... He's a baller. Absolute just quality. I think Wirtz will come good. Do I think Mainoo is better than Wirtz? I think there's a debate to be had there. I think other midfielders. I think your depth in the midfield is better. I think going forward, I think Ekitike is probably, Cunha, and I know the different positions. Bruno Fernandes for me. Would he walk into the Liverpool squad? I don't know. You've got to say Bruno Fernandes, and people know that I'm not his biggest fan. But when you're talking about creators and the things that he does, you've got to say that he's one of the better players. Ekitike, fantastic player. I think that I would rather I think at the moment, I think I would probably rather United's front players at the moment. I think I'd rather Liverpool's midfield, and I think the defensive positions is up for debate. Now, when we're talking about Manu and Wirtz, now look, I know, and I'm talking about, look, when I'm comparing the players, I'm talking about this season. I'm not talking about the previous seasons, because if we spoke about the previous seasons, right, then Van Dijk, right? Van Dijk, there would be no questions, but we can't get the Van Dijk from 2020, right? You can't get the Wirtz from last season. If you're looking at players on the things that they've previously done, like this United side doesn't get anywhere near it, right? But if we're talking on squads now and today, look, Wirtz hasn't been the best this season. Is Wirtz going to be a good player? I've got no doubt about that. But if we're talking about squads now based on this season, I think that there's a debate to be had. And look, I know there is a debate to be had for the previous seasons, but I'm talking about this season. Now, look, Wirtz winning the Player of the Year, that doesn't help Liverpool this season. So, look, whilst I say that, I'm going to say this. I would rather Liverpool's midfield at present, and that includes Wirtz, that includes Zabozlar, that includes McAllister as well. I think there is a debate around. I think there is a debate around the forward players. I would probably still take Cunha, Ekitike. I like him. Look, Isak for me. Look, I can't pick him this year. You know, there is no question for like, would I pick Šeško or Isak this year? Šeško, because he's playing. So look, I think if we're talking about this for this season, I think both teams are quite equal. Next season, I think we'll have to have this debate next season, because I think if we're talking about now, I think it's very, very close. Let's have a little look at what we're saying in there. Have a little look. If Mason didn't have twigs for legs, we'd be more invested. In other news, my son has a boxing match tonight. I hope he does well, Sky. I hope, JB, I have my first press accreditation as well. Nice one, Dino. Dino's got his first press accreditation as well, so he's going to the Dave Allen fight. Look, mate. I recommend you guys to go to Dino's channel, Boxing Hub. I know, Dino, there's a couple of boxing hubs on there, but go and check his one out. So look, legend Dino. Let's have a look. Ekitike and a fully fit Isak. Cherky got the most open play assists. Bruno has more assists in total, but that's because of Casemiro. In this season, United are different. I agree. Virgil van Dijk is washed. I think he is washed. Two different players. One is a roaming winger and one is a 10. Yeah, I know that. Virgil van Dijk is a topic that caused arguments before. Cherky plays behind Haaland. Isak has massively underperformed. Bruno is not the guy. It's very close. It can cause an argument. I asked which squad going into next season. The Liverpool players have massively underachieved. Isak has been a massive miss. Look, if it's difficult. It's difficult because if I'm going to be honest, right? Whose position would I rather be in, right? Going into next season, that I know Liverpool are going to strengthen their side. You know, Liverpool are probably going to have a better squad next season. Now, I don't believe for a second that we're going to go out and we're going to get an Anderson, Tonali. We're going to go and get, you know, the players that we need. Liverpool will. On paper, whose squad would I rather go into? Liverpool's squad. And also, I think Liverpool are going to strengthen that season. Cutler, you can fuck off, mate. Gid, big up just for the laugh. Shesko or Isaac, difficult to tell. Difficult to tell. Cherky better than Bruno and play in the same position. I think Cherky is going to be the player of the season. I really do. Cutler the courageous. Oh, brilliant. Cutler, you're an absolute fucking moron. So please feel free, Cutler, to do one. What an absolute shit name. I would probably call you Cutler the Coward. So I think that name is better. Cherky's better than Bruno and play the same position. Never thought I would get an email from Queensbury. Was shocked. Look, mate, I absolute legend, my friend. Maybe should not compare United and Liverpool. Cutler, mate, you've definitely come in to the wrong place, mate. Look, you can stay. You can stay. I do like to give everybody a chance. Well, you don't see me going on to other people's stuff, mate, with a shit name like that and calling people out. So I would probably say you're a little bit of a coward hiding behind a YouTube account. So, I would probably say that you are a bit of a coward, mate. Look, if you don't like it, if you don't like the channel, mate, then feel free to go away. Or you're going to get blocked. So, what I love is people who come onto the channel, give shit, and then hide behind it's just an opinion. Well, my opinion of you is that you're a massive dickhead. So, so you can feel free to fuck off. There you go, Dino. I may need your camera skills, sorry, my camera experience, which is obviously a big different from skills. Mate, look, I hope it goes well, mate. Look, my advice to you, buddy, would be go and get a decent camera. Bruno fan is needed for the views. Don't block him. Bruno fan is needed for the views. I love it, because people do love. I mean, like, if I was going to go, who I think the player of this season is, I think Cherky for me. I like Cherky. I think that, and people can argue, he's playing in that side. Cherky's a great player. I like Cherky. If City go on and win the league, or if City go and win the FA Cup as well, Cherky has to be in the conversation. How we didn't go and get him, I don't know. I really do not know how we didn't get him. So the only other player I wanted to talk about before I go is Monga. So Jeremy Monga of Leicester City. Now we are being linked to him 16, 17 years old. Now the interesting thing about him is he's already played 22 games and 8 of those have already been in the Premier League. So somebody who's 16, 17, he is a winger type. He's explosive pace. Look, he's young. Confident in attack. He's got that air of youth, that he doesn't know, inexperienced, so he's not scared. Very much, I think, very much like an early Saka, if you like that sort of player. Maybe a Sancho type of flair kind of player. Leicester City, he's going to be very, very cheap as well. Look, initially, I probably dismissed it. In terms of, I probably dismiss this player in terms of his youth, in terms of is he just basically going to go into the under 21s? But if you're to get this player who's already played 8 Premier League games, Championship playing player already this season, I think he's played something like 18 games. That's a player that you're bringing in, not necessarily to start, but that's a player you're bringing into this squad. Like, you can't, you've got a young guy, 16, 17 years old, who's already played 8 Premier League games last season, 18 games already in the Championship. That's somebody that you go and get. That's a decent squad player. That is somebody who's young that you can bring into this side now. And I'm not saying he starts. Maybe he does play the under 21s a couple of times, but I think he's one that you bring him in, and I think it'd be a very, very interesting deal. I think it's got INEOS written all over it. So very interesting type of player. What are you guys saying in here? Let's have a little look. The dictator, he is. Oh, the dictator is here. Okay. Bernardo Silva is crazy. I do agree. Turkey didn't want to come to us yet. Turkey wanted Liverpool. Would have been crazy. I think he would have been a fantastic player. So John T's in the house, says hi. Bruno is in the team, so Turkey couldn't come. The dictator is here. Sully, no, he didn't want Liverpool either. He just said he wants to be United again after the Lyon game. Great. Kvaratskhelia and Elise was the dream. Can't believe they both went for 120 each. Sounds like a great prospect. There is freedom of speech, but I cannot. Yeah, okay. We're not going to get into. We're not going to get into that, my friend. But look, I am not a dictator of this chat. That's true. So he said, yeah, that's fine. But look, I think Monga is a very interesting player. 16, 17. And I initially dismissed it as, look, another youth player who's going to come in, plonk him into the under 18s, and he's going to be a star for the future. I think potentially he could be a star for the future. You've got Arsenal looking at him. I think Liverpool are looking at him as well. 16, 17 years old in terms of price, 20, 25 million pounds. I think he'd be a good player. I like the sound of him. Quick, fast, young, decisive, brave. I like it. I like it. And these are the sorts of signings that I don't mind us doing. I would much rather do this type of player rather than go to the Bundesliga and drop £80 million on a 22-year-old centre midfielder who we don't know. This is the sort of signing. This is a sort of Dan James sort of player for me, where I don't think you can really lose out on that deal quick, taking a chance. But I think it's a risk. It's a risk that I think that we could take. So I think for me, exciting player, prospect, young. So Gabriel, what about him and Chido Obi? Gabriel, for me, let me just go back. Ryan is in the house, said we should be looking at Alex Scott of Bournemouth. Him and Manu would be great. Yes, I like Alex Scott, but I don't necessarily think that Alex, yes, I like Alex Scott, but we need Alex Scott and somebody else. I like him. I do like him. I do like him. I do like him. Gabriel and Chido. Look, Chido needs to go out on loan, I think. Now, I wouldn't be adverse to Chido being in the squad next season, because if we get into the Champions League, then that's League, FA Cup, Carabao Cup, Champions League. I think he needs to go out on loan. So JJ for me, I think it's too early. I think it's too early. Neil, good question. I will come on to that. I think it's too early. I think it's too early for him to come into the squad. Look, there's nothing wrong. There is nothing wrong in bringing him into the squad, giving him some games, and seeing how he does. I'm not adverse to that, but I don't think we need to be bringing him into the squad with an expectation that he's got to play. I think we'll be burning another kid. I think that we need to be focusing on strengthening the main squad and then protecting him. The Gabriel thing, I think we need to protect him more than anybody else. So if he is this talent, he is. But if we're going to progress with this talent, I think that we need to be very, very careful with him. So I'm not adverse to bringing him into the squad, but I think as a conversation about is he going to be the next Lionel Messi? I don't know. I don't think so. So Morgan Rogers, would I sign him? I'd sign him, but not for £100 million. If Bruno Fernandes is still there, we don't need another number 10. The problem for me with him is price and where's he going to play. You know, imagine if we signed him, Bruno Fernandes is still there, Cunha, Mbumo, Ahmad. Like, somebody would have to go, and I don't think it's going to be Bruno Fernandes. If Bruno Fernandes goes in that instance, then I think we need to go look at a Rodgers, a Palmer. But I would much rather use that money because he's going to cost 80 to 100 million. I would much rather drop that money on a centre midfielder. Fernandes from West Ham, Grace, I like him as well. I would rather go and get Fernandes from West Ham, but he's going to be a very, very expensive deal to do. I don't think West Ham are going to go down, so I think it will be a very, very expensive deal to do. But I'd rather drop 60 million on him rather than 100 mil on Morgan Rogers, on the basis that we need that position. Would you consider Ezri Konsa? I'm not sure. I mean, I don't mind him. I don't mind him. You know, 28, Aston Villa. I would rather. What's his name? Sensini, the Bournemouth guy. He's going to be out of contract, 28 years old, 29 years old. I'd rather go and do that deal on a free deal. He's going to be free, so I would rather do that deal. Angelo Stiller would be another prospect, and like Angelo Stiller, 25, 26 years old. He's going to cost 65 to 70 million. I think that I'd get Stiller. I like Stiller. I do. At around 80 million, I suppose we have to choose wisely. Exactly. I like him. I do like him. Obviously, there is a clause that he can go for £35 million, but Stuttgart can buy out that at any point in time. So he's not going to go for 35. He's going to go probably for more around 60 to 65, 70 mark. And the reason for that is Liverpool, and again, I'm not, this is not a dig at them, but, spending the money they have from the Bundesliga, I think has now upped that price. I think Stiller would go to Madrid for 55 to 60 million. I think he comes to United for 70. I think there is a United tax on it as well. I wouldn't say no to Stiller. I wouldn't. I like him a lot, but we have to spend this money wisely. When we go to get the midfielders, it's such a pivotal position. We can't afford to mess it up. We can't. We can't afford I don't mind the Monga signings. I think, those are signings that you can build out a squad with. A young kid, he's already playing games. He's already played 8 games in the Premier League. I think he'd be a very, very good signing. I don't mind those signings. But when we're going to spend the biggest chunk of our money, I think we have to be very, very careful. And Senesi, we can bulk up the squad with those sorts of players as well. Got to go back to work, JB. Catch you later. Thank you, Sky. But look, yeah, I am going to go. Look, fantastic show. It's nice to be linked with different players. It really is. I'm enjoying being linked to different players. I think it's really easy to be linked to the Andersons, Tonali's, and they're going to come back around again. We're going to be linked to those guys again. They're going to come around again, and we're going to be linked to those guys. But it is nicer to see that we're starting to be linked to some other players. My worry is we're going to be cheap this summer, but I want us to think outside of the box. We're going to have to get 1 or 2 Premier League proven, I'd even argue elite players, but we do need a squad. I don't mind supplementing the squad with some of these types of players. So it's going to be an interesting week ahead. Milton, thank you. Alex Murphy says cheers for the heads up via the show. Enjoy your week. Oh, thank you. But I will be back tonight. I'll be back around 7:30, 7 o'clock-ish tonight. Watch along tonight, and then we will do a match reaction afterwards as well. So hopefully you can join me for that. I will put it out there. I will put the show up, and then we can go through all that tonight. So look, have a good rest of your day, morning, afternoon, evening. You are Red Devil News legend. I hope you're doing extremely well, my friend. But look, hopefully you can join me tonight. Watch along tonight, 7:30. United are in action. I am doing well, mate, and hope you are too, buddy. So match reaction after the show as well. So I'll set all that up tonight. And United are back in action. I'm hoping we come out of this of the traps tonight absolutely firing away. 3 points tonight. These are going to be so important. These 3 points tonight are going to be so important, and I think we get 3 points tonight. And I do think that pretty much seals the Champions League, because everyone else is good, is awful. Look. Thank you, my friend. Come on, United. I'll see you tonight. I'm JB. This is the United Devil channel, and I'll see you tonight. Take care.